Welcome, welcome, welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of your sources, really dig into them, pull out the most important bits, and give you that shortcut to being genuinely informed.
Mhm.
And today, we're embarking on a deep dive into something that's, well, incredibly critical for all of us, the future of healthcare.
It really is. And it feels more urgent now than maybe ever before. We're facing this unseen, kind of terrifying threat. The World Health Organization highlighted it back in 2017 with a really stark warning.
Right, that list.
Exactly. That list of 12 urgent bacteria. Some people are even calling it a potential superbug holocaust.
Holocaust, wow.
Yeah, it sounds extreme, but it's framed as an imminent threat.
Yeah.
It could genuinely push us into what they call a post-antibiotic era.
Which sounds apocalyptic, I mean, challenging our survival.
It potentially could, yes.
Yeah.
It fundamentally changes medicine as we know it.
And what's really unsettling, I find, is how often our traditional healthcare models, the ones designed mostly to treat individual illnesses one by one, seem to fall short when they're up against these huge, evolving global crises.
They do. They often struggle with scale and prevention.
Yeah, and instead of feeling like we're empowered, like we can take charge of our own health, sometimes these systems can actually foster a sense of fear, maybe even dependency,
Right. Dependency on the system, on the doctor, on tests.
making us feel less capable, less proactive. It's a dynamic that feels like it desperately needs to change if we're going to face challenges this big, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And this whole problem really highlights the inherent limitations of a purely, doctor-centered approach.
Where all the knowledge and authority is just with the doctor.
Precisely. It can leave the patient feeling, well, helpless or disempowered, like they have no agency in their own care.
Okay, so what does this mean for us, for you listening? Our mission today is to explore a really pioneering vision for healthcare, one that fundamentally challenges this conventional wisdom.
And importantly, this isn't about some new tech giant suddenly appearing to, monetize your health data.
Right, that's a key distinction.
This vision actually started long before that whole rush, and it was driven by a really deep ethical compass, a sense of responsibility.
So, we're going to unpack how one physician's pretty extraordinary journey filled with personal struggles, professional challenges, profound insights led to creating this revolutionary color-coded symptom system.
A system that's now being ingeniously enhanced by AI, which is fascinating.
It really is. And this system isn't just about, say, improving your individual checkup. It's
Sure.
positioned as a bold move to tackle some of the biggest health challenges we face, including those superbugs we just mentioned. It's really about a fundamental shift, isn't it? Moving away from doctor-centered care towards a system that genuinely empowers you. Okay, so to really get our heads around the foundational flaws in our traditional healthcare system, maybe the best place to start is with a really personal story, a turning point that shaped this particular doctor's entire view of medicine.
It often starts with personal experience, doesn't it?
It does. So imagine this. You're a child, just 12 years old.
Yeah.
You have clear symptoms, you know what you're feeling, but you end up being misdiagnosed with typhoid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And despite clearly saying what was wrong, the doctor, in this specific case, just didn't seem to truly listen. Instead, they relied on a whole battery of tests, investigations, even an x-ray.
Standard procedure, perhaps, but
But it led to the wrong diagnosis, and the medicine given was apparently foul-tasting, didn't help, actually made things worse, leading to nightmares, a real fear of being left alone.
it sounds quite traumatic for a child.
Absolutely. And this personal encounter, this feeling of being unheard, misunderstood, maybe even mistreated, seems to have profoundly shaped this doctor's lifelong commitment to challenging the status quo, always for the patient's well-being.
Indeed. That specific moment, that feeling of not being listened to, led to a really profound realization later on. You see, against their parents' advice, because, parents often believe only a doctor can diagnose and treat.
Sure, that's the common belief.
The individual decided to self-treat. They used quinine, which was a medicine that had worked for a malaria-like illness they'd had when they were 6.
Oh.
And remarkably, it worked. But it wasn't just about feeling better physically. It was this dawning understanding, and this is a quote from the source, that illnesses are not diagnostic tests, but based on the story of the illness as I have lived and remembered.
That's a powerful idea, the story of the illness.
It is. This insight, gained way back in childhood, became a cornerstone of their philosophy, that real healthcare has to be fundamentally based on the patient's lived experience, their unique story, not just a series of objective tests that might completely miss the important details. It sort of flips the whole diagnostic process around.
And the challenges didn't just stop with that childhood illness, did they? This doctor faced pretty significant hurdles just trying to get into the medical profession itself.
That's right. In India, they encountered what they describe as blatant discrimination in medical school admissions. This was because of reservation policies.
Ah, the quota system.
Exactly.
Mm.
Policies allocating seats to students from scheduled castes, sometimes even with lower grades, and often providing free education and housing. Our doctor challenged this system, arguing really passionately against reservations, believing that everyone should compete purely on merit.
That must have been controversial.
Extremely.
Yeah.
It was seen as directly challenging the Constitution of India, and it actually led to their arrest.
Arrest.
Yeah. A severe setback. It meant they couldn't pursue post-graduation studies in India, forcing them to return to practice medicine in a village.
Which sounds like a negative outcome, but maybe it wasn't entirely.
Well, adversity sometimes brings unexpected gifts. That time offered invaluable ground-level experience, really shaping their unique, empathetic perspective on healthcare, especially for underserved communities. You learn things in that environment you just don't learn in a city hospital.
Right. So after that period in India, the journey took them to the UK in 1983.
Correct. But the struggle continued there with the PL lab exams. Those are the mandatory tests for doctors trained outside the UK.
Tough exams, I hear.
They are. But then there was a chance encounter, almost serendipitous, on a train. A pediatrician from Edinburgh, Dr. James Sykes, offered what's called a clinical attachment in Scotland. Basically an observational role.
A foot in the door.
Exactly. And this led to a critical case. A young boy diagnosed with pyrexia of unknown origin, basically. A fever with no clear cause. But our doctor, observing the child's temperature chart and, crucially, their chest, noticed these beautiful rose spots.
Rose spots.
Yes,
Yeah.
a classic sign. They immediately suspected salmonellosis, typhoid, or paratyphoid fever. And what's unique about salmonellosis, unlike most infections, is this paradoxical reduction in heart rate when the temperature goes up.
That's counterintuitive.
Very. But it's a key clinical sign. And this astute observation, based on seeing the spots and understanding that unique heart rate pattern, was later confirmed by a Widal test, a specific blood test for typhoid antibodies.
So pure clinical skill, really.
Absolutely. Early proof of exceptional clinical acumen, recognizing subtle signs that others might miss. It really established their intuition and observational skills right away.
It really highlights the power of, that clinical intuition over just following a checklist or strict protocols. And there's another story, isn't there? Another incident that powerfully underlines this tendency to challenge the status quo for the patient.
Yes, the epiglottitis case. A really dangerous condition, especially in children, where the epiglottis, the flap at the back of the throat, swells up and can block the airway completely.
Life-threatening.
Absolutely. The doctor insisted it was epiglottitis based on their observation, but this was initially dismissed by a senior consultant. Shockingly, this consultant apparently called them crazy for even suggesting it.
Wow, that's dismissive.
Extremely. But the doctor stood firm, unwavering, based on what they saw clinically. Then the X-ray results came back. Confirmed epiglottitis. The senior consultant was reportedly visibly shocked, realizing the doctor had been right all along and that their initial dismissal could have actually cost the child's life.
That's a sobering moment.
A very sobering moment. It wasn't about being right. It was about saving a life. It proved that direct observation, deep clinical knowledge, and that unwavering intuition can, and sometimes must, override hierarchical disbelief or maybe overly rigid established protocols. It just solidified this pattern of prioritizing the patient above absolutely everything else.
So, okay, given these really deeply personal, formative experiences, what does all this tell us about the wider healthcare landscape? This doctor, through their own journey in practice, started seeing these fundamental flaws in the dominant doctor-centered way of doing things.
Exactly. They began to recognize that this model, which seemed so authoritative and robust on the surface, was actually contributing to a lot of the problems we still grapple with in healthcare today.
What were the main criticisms?
Well, the core criticism of modern practices really stems from several deeply problematic issues. Firstly, There's what they see as a massive over-reliance on tests and algorithms.
Okay, explain that.
In their view, tests and assessments, which were originally just meant to confirm a diagnosis after a proper clinical assessment, after listening to the patient's story,
Right.
are now mistakenly being used as the primary tools to diagnose in the first place. This, they argue, makes them unreliable as standalone diagnostic methods. They lose context.
So the test becomes the diagnosis rather than a tool to support it.
Precisely. The source specifically calls out the UK's NHS, using things like pre-printed assessment sheets and creating flowcharts and algorithms specifically designed to let computers make diagnoses.
Using computers to diagnose.
Yes. And the argument is, this is emphatically not personal care. It's treating the patient like a collection of data points, not a person with a story. And crucially, this approach has directly led to a frightening outcome. Medical errors.
Medical errors. How significant?
Alarmingly cited in the source as the third common cause of death.
Wow. The third common cause of death. That's staggering. It really underscores that these aren't just individual mistakes, maybe, but flaws baked right into the system itself.
It absolutely does suggest systemic issues. Secondly, there's a strong critique of what are known as the NICE guidelines.
Yes, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence guidelines in the UK.
Exactly. These often dictate very rigid, algorithm-driven protocols for diagnosis and treatment across the board. Our source describes this pervasive protocol as misleading and masterminded.
Strong words.
Very strong. And importantly, they see it as actively breeding clinical errors. The argument is that these guidelines enforce this rigid, step-by-step approach that often overrides the crucial practice of actually listening to the patient's story of the illness as they have lived and remember it.
So the flowchart trumps the narrative.
In essence, yes. When you force doctors to stick rigidly to a predetermined flowchart, instead of letting them use their experience and intuition to really absorb the patient's unique story and symptom combination, you inevitably lose that crucial nuance. You lose the holistic understanding needed for accurate, personalized care.
And these issues, they extend beyond just the doctors and the established protocols, don't they? It seems to also involve other healthcare professionals taking on roles, maybe within this rigid system, that they might not be fully equipped for.
Absolutely. That's the third major point of criticism, the expansion of nurse-led practice. Now, this is presented as a contentious issue. In the source's view, it involves unqualified nurses and chemists, referring to pharmacists offering diagnosis and treatment directly.
Which the source calls
Unethical. Unequivocally. They even highlight criticism from a British Medical Association doctor back in 2005 who publicly called nurse prescribing irresponsible and dangerous and explicitly said he'd prefer fully trained doctors for his own family.
What's the core concern there?
The core concern articulated is about a potential inadequacy in pharmacological knowledge, that deep understanding of drugs, their interactions, side effects, and nurses having to rely on a more limited nurse prescriber's formulary. This, the source argues, constrains their ability to make fully comprehensive and safe decisions, and ironically, might even inadvertently strengthen the doctor-centered model by creating tiers of care that could lead to errors and patient harm.
Okay, if we connect all this, the over-reliance on tests, the rigid protocols, the delegation of critical roles, it sounds like the whole system has kind of inadvertently created this sort of learned helplessness, maybe, and increased dependency in patients.
It's exactly right. That's the fourth critical disadvantage identified: increased dependency and disparities. The system, over time, has cultivated this culture of dependency on doctors. It's led people to believe that tests, scans, and other expensive investigations and specialist care is essential, sometimes even for relatively minor things.
Right, you feel like you need the scan, even if the doctor isn't sure it's necessary.
Precisely. And this reliance on expensive, often unnecessary interventions doesn't just inflate healthcare costs dramatically, it also significantly increases disparities, because access to those expensive resources is obviously not equal across all socioeconomic groups. It basically teaches people to outsource responsibility for their own health, fostering this mindset that only complex external interventions can solve their problems.
And here's where it gets particularly interesting, maybe even a bit disturbing, connecting these systemic flaws directly to those huge global health threats like AMR. Because if we look at the economic drivers behind some of these shifts.
The role of big pharma.
Exactly. Pharmaceutical companies, apparently after the mid-1980s, largely shifted their focus. They moved away from developing new antibiotics, which are typically used short-term to cure an infection.
Right, finite use.
Towards more profitable, lifetime use drugs. Think about medications for high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and later, things like antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs.
Drugs you take potentially forever.
Exactly. Because these drugs are taken indefinitely, sometimes for the rest of a patient's life, they are far, far more profitable than a short course of antibiotics. And this strategic, profit-driven shift directly made the antimicrobial resistance crisis worse.
How so?
Because the pipeline for developing new antibiotics is just dried up significantly. There was less financial incentive. So even as bacteria were naturally evolving resistance, we weren't developing enough new weapons to fight them.
So it's not just a medical problem or a protocol problem.
No. It's this deeply intertwined economic and public health crisis. And on top of all that, you have the significant psychological burden on patients caught in the middle of it all.
Okay, so given all these massive systemic flaws we've just unpacked, the over-reliance on tests, the rigid protocols, the ethical concerns about who diagnoses, the economic drivers making things worse, how do you even start to pivot towards something genuinely revolutionary?
It's a huge challenge.
It is, and our pioneering doctor actually did venture into early digital health. They created a website and symptom checker, and it was apparently saturated with list of symptoms, signs, and information about disease. Now, at first glance, that sounds like a good idea, right? A positive step, getting information out there.
You'd think so. More information equals more power, maybe.
That's the common assumption. But then a really profound ethical dilemma emerged. One so significant it actually caused them to stop the entire project.
Really? Why stop?
That's the crucial part. The project was stopped precisely because, from an ethical standpoint, the doctor feared it was inflicting more harm than good.
More harm. The core ethical issue was this. When patients were given this huge, overwhelming list of symptoms and all the possible differential diagnoses.
The Dr. Google effect.
Kind of, yes. They would often, quite understandably, recognize serious illness like cancer or other rare illness and do not give importance to the common illness, even though common illnesses are, well, common.
So the rare, scary stuff jumps out.
Exactly. It led to severe info overload, causing undue panic and anxiety, even for really minor symptoms. You know, a common headache suddenly gets linked to a brain tumor in this massive list, causing immense distress where probably none was warranted.
Right, I can see how that would happen. Catastrophic thinking kicks in.
Totally. So this direct experience really highlighted the critical importance of responsible information delivery. You can't just dump undifferentiated data on people without proper empathetic guidance. It has to be structured.
And what's particularly insightful there, and pointed out in the sources, is that this ethical restraint, this choice to halt a potentially profitable project because it might harm patients psychologically, stands in pretty stark contrast to many of today's tech giants.
Ooh, that's the source notes.
Continue creating apps and websites to monetize, often without maybe the same level of deep ethical reservation about the psychological impact of that information overload.
Yeah. So this early hands-on experience prioritizing patient well-being over potential revenue really seems to have cemented the need for a truly patient-centered approach, one that puts holistic well-being and responsible guidance first.
Absolutely. It shaped everything that came next.
Okay, so if just bombarding people with lists of symptoms and diseases doesn't work, in fact, it backfires. How do you empower people without overwhelming them? How do you give clarity without causing panic?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And the answer for this pioneering doctor eventually came in the form of Dr. Maya, a system built not just on cold algorithms, but on decades of profound clinical experience and intuition.
Indeed. The evolution of Dr. Maya wasn't overnight. It was an iterative process, born from a commitment to practical solutions. An early version, an early program, was called PAT. That stood for Pediatric Assessment Tool.
PAT, okay.
This was actually a bespoke program written way back in a foundational programming language called BASIC. Remember BASIC?
Vaguely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was designed specifically to help junior doctors differentiate minor infections from serious ones in children. The main goal was simply to reduce wasted hospitalization by providing a structured yet clinically informed way to assess and triage kids.
So applying structured thinking, but based on clinical reality even back then.
Exactly. It shows these early efforts to streamline medical assessment using technology, but grounded in real-world clinical needs.
And this foundational work, this PAT program, eventually led to the famous Dr. Maya's color-coded system in 2003.
Exactly. That was the core innovation, the real breakthrough moment. Instead of just listing symptoms alphabetically, or creating a rigid sequential diagnostic algorithm, which often leads to those impersonal, sometimes misleading computer diagnoses we talked about.
Right, the flowchart problem.
Dr. Maya created a color-coded symptom list that helped to combine symptoms like doctors have done for years before computers were invented. It's about pattern recognition.
Combining symptoms, like a real doctor does.
Precisely. The crucial difference here, and this source emphasizes this, is that it does not follow algorithms that address one symptom after the other. It's about looking at the patient's whole story, the pattern of their symptoms together through a more holistic, intuitive lens, similar to how an experienced clinician pieces together clues to form a diagnosis.
That feels like a massive shift in how you'd approach a digital health tool. Can you give us some concrete examples? How do these color-coded categories actually work? What do they tell the user to do?
Certainly. The system uses a logic that's a bit like a traffic light, but it's more nuanced, using combinations of colors to reflect urgency. So, Category 1, immediate. This is indicated by having 3 BLRE symptoms. This signifies a critical, potentially life-threatening situation. An example might be a combination like high fever with severe cough and shortness of breath, or maybe widespread rash with confusion, or other really clear signs of severe infection.
Okay, 3 blue means serious trouble. What's the action?
The action for Category 1 is crystal clear, concise, and urgent. Isolate and call 999, or the local emergency number. It immediately flags situations where every single second counts.
Right. What about the next level down?
That's Category 2, emergency. This is identified by a combination of 2 BLOE symptoms plus one other symptom, like red, yellow, or green. So, for instance, maybe fever with persistent cough and moderate fatigue, or perhaps a suspected infectious disease combined with an underlying chronic condition, like diabetes or heart disease.
Still serious, but maybe slightly less immediately critical than Category 1.
Exactly. These still need very urgent attention and professional medical help, but it might allow for a slightly less immediate response than Category 1, maybe getting to urgent care quickly, rather than necessarily needing an ambulance right that second.
Got it. And the third category?
Category 3, urgent. This is defined by having 1 red symptom plus 2 yellow-green symptoms. Examples here might include combinations like persistent abdominal pain with a mild fever, or maybe localized swelling with moderate pain, or something like headache with visual disturbances.
Okay, so definitely needs attention, but not necessarily A&E right now.
Precisely. The recommended action here is to seek urgent care GP for advice and attention. This really helps people distinguish between something needing immediate emergency response versus something that needs professional medical advice soon, but maybe not a 999 call. It empowers them to make a more nuanced, informed decision about what to do next, reducing panic and inappropriate use of emergency services.
That's incredibly practical. It gives people real agency in a stressful situation. And it sounds like it also considers important contextual information, not just the raw symptoms, which feels key for a truly personal assessment.
It absolutely does. Dr. Maya integrates critical contextual factors to refine its triage advice. This includes, sort of philosophically, a foundational idea that knowledge of health is knowledge of life, recognizing that just understanding your own health context is empowering.
Makes sense.
It also considers things like common infectious diseases that might be prevalent in your specific geographical region at that time, because that can significantly change the likelihood of certain diagnoses and the urgency.
Like knowing if there is a flu outbreak locally.
Exactly. Furthermore, it incorporates specific vital signs that a user can input if they know them, things like reporting clammy skin, cold sweat, feeling weak, lightheaded, or actual measurements like abnormal temperature, pulse, BP. These physiological signs, especially something like a rapid irregular heartbeat, immediately signal higher urgency and feed directly into that color-coded assessment.
So it's much more than just a simple symptom checker then.
Oh, absolutely. It's a contextualized, intuition-driven triage system designed to empower genuinely informed decision-making, not just spit out a list of possibilities.
And this brings us back to something we've touched on before in the show, the deep psychological impact of illness and especially information overload. Remember we talked about catastrophic thinking.
Where a small symptom spirals into the worst-case scenario in your head.
Exactly. Or things like rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where even mild internal discomfort can trigger really intense emotional distress. This ties directly into how we react to health scares, doesn't it? And how easily we can fall into these cycles of anxiety and maybe unnecessary medical tests and expenses.
It absolutely does. And Dr. Maya was meticulously designed to directly combat that very common, very human fear-driven cycle. Symptoms A panic, E test, A expense.
Right, the expensive panic loop.
Exactly. The system's core purpose, as described in the sources, is to act as a trigger that stops thought, prevents panic. It's referred to with this interesting term, Zeta 9.
Zeta 9, what does that mean?
Think of Zeta 9 as like a cognitive circuit breaker. In those moments of uncertainty or health anxiety, our brains often jump straight to the worst conclusions, that catastrophic thinking you mentioned. Dr. Maya, by providing immediate, clear, actionable guidance based on those intelligent symptom combinations, aims to directly interrupt that panicked thought cycle.
So it short-circuits the panic.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't just provide information, it fundamentally tries to alter the emotional and cognitive pathway. It allows for a moment of rational decision-making instead of letting fear drive impulsive action. It's a kind of psychological intervention woven right into the system's design.
So by giving people accessible knowledge about their symptoms and guiding them to the right level of care, it genuinely alleviates fear and promotes proactive health management. It makes the whole experience feel more collaborative and less intimidating. That's a huge departure from the traditional medical journey, which can often feel really anxiety-inducing, leaving you feeling dependent and out of control.
And what's truly profound here, especially with the AI integration, is the vision for Dr. Maya GPT as a safe, non-judgmental companion. Its multilingual capabilities and AI power allow it to go far beyond just analyzing symptoms. It aims to offer a confidential, compassionate space, particularly, for example, for children to speak without fear.
How does that work with children?
This is a critical and incredibly sensitive innovation. Children can interact using voice, images, maybe simple words, and the key is they don't need to know how to explain abuse explicitly. The AI is being designed to interpret things like emotional tone, word patterns, and symptom clusters, even without direct statements, to potentially detect underlying issues, including possible abuse, and then alert the appropriate channels or caregivers.
Wow, that's moving into a whole different realm of care.
It represents a profound shift towards empathetic, proactive care, extending far beyond typical medical triage into holistic well-being and even child protection.
That's truly groundbreaking. It feels like the vision for this patient-centered care took a massive leap forward with the integration of artificial intelligence. I mean, it's one thing to build a powerful system based on human intuition, but scaling it, making it universally accessible, that seems to require cutting-edge tech.
Indeed. And the doctor who created Dr. Maya was apparently initially surprised by the sheer capability of AI, specifically ChatGPT in this case. When they shared their books, the ones detailing the whole color-coded system and the philosophy behind it with ChatGPT.
They just fed the books to the AI.
Essentially, yes. And they found that ChatGPT didn't just process the text. It identified my color-coded system, help it to offer patient-centered care and offer empathetic advice, because it can differentiate minor from serious illness and fetch information faster and more personal.
So the AI recognized the value of the human design system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It understood why the color coding and symptom combination approach was effective for providing patient-centered, empathetic advice. That was a pivotal moment, realizing AI's potential not to replace, but to amplify this patient-centered approach, combining that deep human wisdom with machine efficiency and scale.
That's fascinating. A powerful AI essentially validating a system built on human intuition. So what does that mean for how Dr. Maya GPT is being developed right now? It sounds like it's about meticulously training the AI to embody that human wisdom, right?
Precisely. The current development is all about creating very specific instructions and also create documents and protocol how ChatGPT must listen, identify the color of symptoms and signs, and offer the best healthcare advice. The goal is for AI will be the gatekeeper to systems healthcare.
A gatekeeper.
Yes, a smart, empathetic gatekeeper. It's about meticulously training the AI to mimic and scale those decades of clinical intuition and, crucially, the profound ethical considerations that led to the original Dr. Maya system in the first place. It's about embedding that deep human understanding and ethical framework right into the AI's core functionality, ensuring it serves as a genuinely helpful, trustworthy guide.
And what are the core principles guiding this, especially when you're dealing with sensitive health information and potentially life-altering advice? Getting the AI right must be paramount.
Absolutely. Several core principles are central to this effort. Firstly, transparency and explainability, often called XAI.
Explainable AI.
Right. While Dr. Maya is very clear it's not a diagnostic tool, it still strives to provide understandable reasons for its recommendations. So it might say something like, based on the combination of severe chest pain and shortness of breath, immediate emergency care is advised. This clarity is vital. Many AI systems currently operate like black boxes. You don't know why they made a decision.
Which erodes trust.
Exactly. As the source points out, that undermines clinician and patient trust. By explaining its reasoning in simple terms, Dr. Maya aims to foster confidence and support informed decision-making by the user.
Okay, transparency. What else?
Secondly, data quality. This is critical. The sources acknowledge that medical data in general can be riddled with inaccuracies and missing data. So the emphasis for Dr. Maya is laser-focused on using high-quality, well-annotated datasets and implementing standardized data processing protocols for its training and its ongoing knowledge base. These datasets have to be regularly updated and validated to keep the AI accurate and relevant, ensuring it learns from the best, most current information available.
Garbage in, garbage out, essentially.
Precisely. And thirdly, the user experience is paramount. This isn't just about the interface looking nice. It's about clear, health-literate communication using language people understand. It's about effectively managing user expectations about what the AI can and cannot do. And it's about continuously building trust. The whole interaction needs to feel intuitive, empathetic, and reassuring so users feel genuinely heard and guided, not just processed by a machine. It's about transforming the AI from just a tool into more of a companion.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly sophisticated and ethically grounded, which brings us back to the big picture. How does this incredibly patient-centric AI actually help us fight the biggest battles, like those menacing superbugs we kicked off this deep dive talking about? Right, we started with the superbug threat, this looming post-antibiotic era. Let's dive a bit deeper into the horrifying reality of that. This isn't some distant sci-fi problem. It's here now, and it's growing fast, isn't it? Threatening to basically redefine medicine.
You're absolutely right. The scale of this problem is genuinely staggering. That 2019 CDC report, it stated that in the USA alone, more than 2.8 million infections and 35,000 deaths each year are caused by antibiotic-resistant bacteria and fungi.
2.8 million infections, 35,000 deaths.
And what's truly chilling is that this figure was nearly double the annual deaths suggested in their 2013 report. That shows a terrifying acceleration of the problem.
Doubled in just 6 years.
Roughly, yes. And the projections for the future, even more dire. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, have been predicted to wipe out at least 10 millions of the world population, if not double by the year 2050, if we don't take decisive global action immediately.
10 million people a year. That's more than die from cancer currently.
It is. This isn't just a health crisis. It's a potential humanitarian disaster on a scale we've, frankly, rarely encountered before.
And what's fascinating in a terrifying way is that resistance isn't just one single thing, is it? It's not like the microbes have just one trick. It's more like this multi-pronged evolutionary arms race. Can you break down some of the ingenious ways these superbugs actually develop resistance?
Certainly, it's a constant, complex evolutionary battle. Microbes adapt incredibly quickly. So for antibiotics, bacteria have developed various clever defenses. They can produce protective proteins that physically block the antibiotic from binding to its target inside the cell, like putting up a shield. Or, famously, they produce enzymes like the beta-lactamase found in common bugs like E. coli. These enzymes act like tiny molecular scissors, literally cutting up and destroying the antibiotic molecule before it can harm the bacterium.
Wow, they fight back chemically.
They do, and antifungals face similar hurdles. Fungi can become resistant by, for instance, increasing the number of target proteins the drug aims for inside the cell. It's like diluting the drug's effect, making it less potent. They can also activate these internal pumps, efflux pumps, that actively push the antifungal drug right back out of the fungal cell before it reaches a lethal concentration.
Pumping the drug out. Clever.
Very. And what's more, fungi can form biofilms. These are complex, sticky communities of microbes, all encased in this protective, slimy matrix. Think of it like a microscopic fortress. These biofilms, estimated to be involved in maybe 80% of human infections, especially things like chronic wounds, allow fungi to hide from the immune system and make them incredibly difficult for antifungal drugs to penetrate and treat effectively.
Okay, so bacteria and fungi are tough. What about viruses?
Even antivirals aren't immune to resistance. We've seen viruses adapt. For example, influenza developed resistance to older drugs like adamantane. Herpes simplex virus can become resistant to a cyclover. And HIV is notorious for developing various resistance mutations that allow it to evade different classes of antiviral drugs, meaning treatment regimens constantly have to be adjusted and combined.
It's a constant chase.
It is. And finally, even antiparasitics and anthelmintics, the drugs used against parasitic worms and protozoa, face resistance. For instance, resistance to ivermectin, which is a crucial drug for diseases like river blindness and also used widely in animal health, has been linked to mechanisms that rapidly pump the drug out of the parasite system. We also see resistance to antimonials used for leishmaniasis and to praziquantel for schistosomiasis, posing huge challenges, especially in tropical medicine.
It's like a global microscopic rebellion. So if we connect this back, where are these superbugs actually coming from? It's not just natural evolution happening in a vacuum, right? What human activities are essentially pouring fuel on this fire, driving their rapid rise and spread?
That's a crucial question. The drivers are multifaceted, often interconnected, and they touch almost every sector of modern life. Firstly, agriculture. This sector is cited as the largest consumer of antibiotics globally. And critically, they're used not just for treating genuinely sick animals, but maybe even more controversially, primarily to promote the growth of food animals, making them grow faster and bigger on less feed.
Using antibiotics for growth promotion.
Yes, this widespread, often low-dose, non-therapeutic use in livestock massively increases bacteria's exposure to these drugs, giving them countless opportunities to develop resistance. And then these drug-resistant bacteria can easily transfer to humans through contaminated meat or produce in the food chain, or through environmental contamination from farm runoff, and then spread globally via international travel and trade.
Okay, so farming practices are a huge factor. What else?
Secondly, environmental contamination. Think about untreated sewage and effluents coming from industrial sites, hospitals, and even just municipal wastewater systems. These discharges are often laden with various disease-producing bacteria that develop antibiotic resistance because they're constantly exposed to residual antibiotics and other chemicals in that wastewater environment.
Creating breeding grounds for resistance.
Exactly. Hotbeds for resistance to emerge and spread. We have alarming concrete examples, particularly from India, where studies of water samples from major rivers like the Ganga, Yamuna, Kaveri, and Mutha, as well as from sewage treatment plants, have found them highly polluted with antibiotic-resistant E. coli.
That's deeply concerning. And the third driver.
And finally, it comes back to misuse and overuse in healthcare itself. This loops back to that doctor's long-standing concern about the overzealousness to encourage people to visit that misuse and overuse antibiotics, meaning patients demanding antibiotics for viral infections like colds or the flu, where antibiotics are completely useless. Or doctors prescribing them unnecessarily, maybe due to diagnostic uncertainty, maybe lack of time, maybe just patient pressure. Whatever the reason, this widespread practice directly fuels the very resistance we're trying desperately to fight. Every single unnecessary prescription contributes to the problem.
Right. So given these pervasive drivers, agriculture, environment, healthcare misuse, what does this all mean for preventing the next pandemic? How does a patient-centered system like Dr. Maya, focused on empowering individuals, actually impact our ability to contain these widespread threats and maybe even curb AMR? It feels like it could be a real game changer.
Dr. Maya has the potential for a direct and profound impact on preventing pandemics and controlling infections in several key ways. Firstly, and perhaps most obviously, through early isolation.
How does it help with that?
By helping individuals combine their symptoms intelligently, understand their potential significance, and really process your ailment, Dr. Maya empowers them to know better that you shouldn't be in the street with other people that might catch the infection. This self-awareness and the ability to make an informed decision facilitates early self-isolation, which is absolutely critical for breaking the chain of transmission for contagious diseases.
So knowing earlier if you might be contagious.
Exactly. The sources use the Ebola virus as an interesting example. It was arguably very much more easy to contain, partly because its early symptoms were often obviously displayed on the carrier's body, making immediate isolation more straightforward. Dr. Maya aims to give people that clarity for less obvious infections too, from the common flu to a novel virus.
That's a powerful idea. Empowering people to essentially become the first line of defense, recognizing when they might pose a risk and acting responsibly. It shifts the burden, or maybe better, the responsibility, onto the individual, but in an informed way.
Precisely. Secondly, it leads to a really significant reduction in healthcare strain. Think about it. If patients can effectively and confidently manage normal and trivial ailments themselves, guided by Dr. Maya's clear advice about what's urgent and what's not.
They don't rush to the doctor or A&E for every little thing?
Exactly. It drastically reduces the need for unnecessary clinical appointments and emergency room visits. This frees up precious healthcare worker time and resources, letting them focus on the truly critical cases, the ones that genuinely require intensive care and emergency. And, crucially, it also reduces the rate of spreading infection in the hospital when there are fewer people present to be infected. It makes hospitals safer, not potential hotspots for transmission during an outbreak. It fundamentally makes the whole health system more efficient and resilient.
And it sounds like this isn't just about individual actions adding up, but fostering a kind of collective responsibility, a wider societal shift in thinking.
It absolutely is. This whole approach is about empowering individual responsibility, but within a larger ecosystem. The message embedded in the system is clear. This is not the responsibility of the doctors and nurses alone, but the individual, policymakers, other health professionals, healthcare industries, and even the agricultural sectors. Everyone has a role.
So Dr. Maya facilitates that.
Yes, by providing accessible, reliable, actionable health advice directly to the public, it effectively makes everyone a more knowledgeable link in the chain of infection control. It's about building a more resilient, informed society that can collectively respond to health threats rather than a passive, dependent one just waiting for top-down solutions.
But okay, beyond controlling infections with smarter triage and empowering individuals, there's another really fascinating angle the sources highlight, the idea of working with nature, not just constantly fighting against it. This feels like a real perspective shift, moving away from seeing our bodies and the microbial world as just battlegrounds.
Indeed. This brings us to some powerful, often less discussed, alternative strategies for combating infections and superbugs. First, let's talk about the microbiome, all the trillions of microbes living in and on us.
Our good germs.
Exactly. The doctor behind Dr. Maya makes a striking personal claim. Despite 40 years of direct exposure to a huge array of infections, cholera, flu, hepatitis, TB, HIV/AIDS, superbugs like MRSA, they report never contracting one.
Then never.
They attribute this remarkable immunity not to vaccines or drugs, but fundamentally to the germs within and on my body. Their own healthy, balanced microbiome acting as a protective shield.
So the best defense is a good microbial community.
That's the concept. The sources also mention how childhood exposure to a diverse range of microbes actually helps strengthen the immune system, making it less prone to conditions like asthma and allergies later on. This directly challenges the popular, almost obsessive notion that we need to constantly sterilize everything around us, that all germs are bad.
The hygiene hypothesis, essentially.
Exactly. It even references a fascinating study apparently about a dirty hospital where infection rates were surprisingly better than in obsessively cleaned ones. Why? Because the aggressive fumigation had actually killed off the beneficial microbes, the good germs, that normally help keep the harmful ones in check. It's all about cultivating balance, not just annihilation.
That's a complete paradigm shift for many of us taught to sanitize everything constantly. What other natural avenues show promise against these tough infections?
Another really promising area is phytocompounds. These are simply plant-derived chemicals. Plants have been making potent chemicals for defense and communication for millions of years.
Like traditional remedies.
Yes, it includes things like millennia-old household remedies such as garlic, which has well-documented antimicrobial properties. But it also includes newly discovered potent agents being actively researched from diverse plant sources. What's particularly compelling about them is their potential for synergistic effects when used alongside conventional antibiotics.
Meaning they boost the antibiotic.
Exactly. They can enhance the efficacy of existing drugs, maybe making them work against resistant strains again, or allowing lower doses to be used. They can also be delivered using novel vehicles with nanoparticles, tiny delivery systems, for better targeting directly to infection sites and potentially reducing side effects. And crucially, their natural origin and often lower cost make them incredibly valuable, especially in low-resource areas where access to expensive conventional drugs might be limited.
Okay, so harnessing plant power. And then there are these things called bacteriophages. They sound almost like science fiction targeted biological weapons against bacteria.
They do have that sci-fi feel. Bacteriophages, or just phages, are viruses, but they're viruses that only infect and kill specific bacteria. They're natural predators of bacteria.
So using viruses to kill bacteria?
Precisely. They're widely studied as biological agents, and they can be particularly effective against really problematic bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus, including its antibiotic-resistant form, MRSA. The sources mention they're often applied topically, directly onto the infected area, like a wound.
Is there evidence they work?
Yes. A striking example cited is a study by Fish et al. It showed dramatic improvement using a topical application of a commercially available Georgian staphylococcal phage preparation. This was in a small group of patients with really stubborn diabetic foot ulcers, infected with MRSA and regular Staph aureus that weren't responding to other treatments. It's an approach that basically leverages nature's own microbial predators against our bacterial enemies, offering a powerful, highly targeted alternative or adjunct to chemical antibiotics, especially in cases of multi-drug resistance.
What we've really been exploring today feels like more than just a technological step forward. It's a revolutionary rethinking of healthcare itself. And the advantages of this patient-centered, AI-driven approach, they seem truly multifaceted, don't they? Extending far beyond just making your own doctor's visit better. It sounds like it could create this ripple effect of empowerment across whole communities, even nations.
Absolutely. The potential benefits described are extensive and could be deeply impactful across many levels. Firstly, accessibility and inclusivity are absolutely fundamental to the design. Dr. Maya GPT is built to be multilingual, immediately breaking down language barriers that often prevent people from accessing care. It's also designed with voice and face login enabled, specifically for vulnerable users, people who might struggle with literacy, have visual impairments, or physical limitations making typing hard.
So easier for everyone to use.
Exactly. And critically, it's designed to work on low bandwidth devices. This is huge for making it viable in remote or underserved areas where internet access might be patchy or slow, really helping to bridge that digital divide. There's even mention of a training via the AsiaPath program to onboard illiterate users, ensuring that basic digital literacy itself isn't a barrier to getting vital health information.
That level of inclusivity is impressive.
It means that potentially rich, poor, illiterates all over the world get the best healthcare advice and treatment. It's about genuinely democratizing health knowledge and making quality advice accessible to literally everyone, everywhere. Secondly, it could drastically contribute to reduced healthcare burden by empowering patients to intelligently and confidently attend to normal and trivial ailments themselves, guided by Dr. Maya.
Less strain on the system.
Massively less strain. It reduces travel and hospital visits, which cuts significant costs, both for individuals in terms of time off work and travel expenses, and for national health systems burdened by overcrowding. Crucially, as we discussed, it reduces the spread of diseases in the community by keeping less urgent, potentially infectious cases out of crowded waiting rooms. It explicitly aims to reduces the workload on general physicians, freeing them up to focus more on more pressing matters that require intensive care and emergency. It just helps allocate precious resources where they're most critically needed.
Makes sense. What else?
Thirdly, it aims for an enhanced patient experience. It provides empathetic advice. The AI is trained for this and helps users make informed decisions. This directly tackles that fear and anxiety, that Z to 9 effect we talked about, interrupting the panic cycle. Patient testimonials mentioned in the sources powerfully back this up, showing how the app helped people avoid wasted consultations that often stem more from anxiety and catastrophic thinking than genuine medical need.
So more confidence, less panic.
Right. Moreover, it delivers truly personalized care. Unlike those generic symptom lists or rigid algorithms that just plod through one symptom at a time, this system is built on combining symptoms holistically, recognizing patterns like traditional doctors have always done. This promises faster and far more personal information and advice tailored to the individual's specific combination of symptoms and their context. It also plays a vital role, potentially, in preventing misinformation. By acting as a trusted, accessible, evidence-based source of actionable health advice, Dr. Maya aims to stop people from misinterpreting their symptoms based on unreliable or fear-mongering online searches, which can lead to unnecessary panic or even dangerous self-treatment attempts.
A reliable alternative to Dr. Google?
Hopefully, yes. And finally, it offers holistic support. The app isn't just designed for when you're acutely sick. It aims to provide special solutions to the physical and mental health well-being of patients. This includes things like a comprehensive package, focused on consultations about the primary health concerns of a mother and unborn baby during pregnancy. This shows a real commitment to health across the entire lifespan, and a much broader, more compassionate definition of what patient care can encompass.
This really does sound like it's about much more than just individual health checks. It feels like a potential catalyst for a profound societal shift. This whole holistic, patient-centered approach, fueled by Dr. Maya's innovation and the unwavering ethical compass of the doctor behind it, seems to have truly broad implications for the future of healthcare globally.
Absolutely. The broader implications are potentially enormous. Firstly, Just by empowering individuals, regardless of their background, their language, their literacy level, it fundamentally helps to reduce disparities in healthcare access and quality. This is absolutely critical if we're serious about achieving global health equity and making health a genuine universal right, not just a privilege for those who can afford it or navigate complex systems.
Reducing inequality is huge. What else?
Secondly, and this comes through quite powerfully in the source material, there's a chronicle of the doctor's own profound personal battle with institutions like the NHS in the UK. It's described using strong terms like torture, pain, and discrimination, apparently stemming from a fundamental refusal to be tamed by bureaucratic systems they saw as harmful.
A fight against the system.
Yes, and it's presented as a potent testament to the absolute necessity of holding policymakers accountable. The sources include the direct quote, "They are not God, they are human like you and me." This tireless, difficult fight is framed as highlighting the systemic issues that contribute to healthcare damage and the disreputing the honor the line of doctors had stood for. It serves as a stark reminder that achieving true systemic change often requires challenging established authority, sometimes at great personal cost, to ensure healthcare systems genuinely serve the patient first and foremost.
It sounds like a real story of incredible resilience against a massive entrenched system, a testament to just unwavering conviction in your principles.
Certainly reads that way. There's a philosophy mentioned, calm sea does not make a good sailor, which perfectly reflects the immense resilience and inner strength needed to push for such monumental change against inertia and opposition. It acknowledges that real competence, real transformative leadership, is often forged in the crucible of difficult times. And interestingly, there's even a connection made to the philosophical concept of letting go of the illusion of free will. It's suggested that embracing this idea, understanding the complex drivers behind behavior, both our own and others, can actually lead to greater compassion, both for oneself and for others, and maybe less self-torment, which could be crucial psychologically for individuals pushing against huge systemic barriers. When you understand the complex web of causes, perhaps you can't beat yourself up over every single outcome or setback.
That's a deep thought. And finally, what about the global reach? Is this vision just for a few select regions, or is the ambition much, much bigger?
Oh, the vision articulated is undeniably global. Dr. Maya isn't positioned as just a local solution for one country. It explicitly targets the massive global digital health market, valued at over $400 billion and growing incredibly fast.
And
Its specific focus is on underserved plus semi-urban populations across key regions like India, Africa, and Southeast Asia, places where access to reliable, quality healthcare is often most challenging. The plan is to scale through multiple models: B2C, so subscription-based apps directly to consumers; B2B, licensing the technology to clinics and hospitals; and even B2G, aiming for adoption by state governments and public health initiatives.
so multiple avenues for impact.
Exactly. The ambition is crystal clear. It's framed as a mission that, as the source boldly states, can surpass Apple and tech giants combined.
That's a huge claim.
It is, but the reasoning given is that, unlike many purely commercial apps, this will be an app that humans cannot survive during the post-antibiotic era. It positions Dr. Maya not merely as a convenient tool or a commercial venture, but as a potentially essential, life-sustaining technology for humanity's future health.
Wow. Okay, what we've really explored today is, well, it's truly a deep dive into a revolutionary approach to healthcare. It seems born from decades of real, hands-on clinical experience, guided by this fierce ethical compass we've discussed, and driven by a very deep understanding of human psychology and those huge global health threats like AMR. This isn't just about a new app or a new piece of tech, is it? It feels much bigger, like a fundamental reimagining of the patient's role in their own health journey, and maybe the very structure of how we deliver care.
It really is a compelling case for genuine patient empowerment. Leveraging AI not to replace that vital human connection, but actually to enhance it, making quality healthcare advice faster, more personal, and crucially, more accessible than maybe ever before.
Right.
And critically, it's explicitly designed to help tackle issues as massive and urgent as antimicrobial resistance, a problem that absolutely demands a collective, informed effort from individuals understanding their symptoms better, to healthcare providers using resources wisely, right through to governments and industries working together.
That shift, moving away from a system that maybe too often breeds fear and dependency, towards one that actively cultivates self-awareness, personal responsibility, and informed action, it feels like, more than just a technological upgrade. It feels like a genuine paradigm shift for human well-being.
It's about putting the care back into healthcare, perhaps, by truly centering it around the patient, recognizing their unique story, their context, and trusting their capacity for informed decisions when given the right tools and guidance.
So this deep dive leaves us with a really powerful thought, one that comes directly from the sources and seems to underpin this entire philosophy. It is not the behavior that needs to be changed. It is the driver that triggers your imagination, thoughts, and feelings that requires the change.
That's interesting. Focusing on the internal trigger, not just the external action.
Exactly. So the question for you listening is, what does it mean for you to embrace that idea in your own health journey? What are the underlying drivers, the fears, the assumptions, the beliefs that trigger your thoughts and feelings when you feel unwell, when you think about seeking care, when you decide whether or not to trust your own body?
And how might understanding and maybe transforming those inner drivers impact not just your individual well-being?
But also potentially contribute to the future of global health. Something to think about. Mull that over until our next deep dive.